Could be live. Okay. This is going to go just like clockwork, and this is Lightning Talks, and it is 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and 5 minutes. And I'm here to make sure that it's 5 minutes and 10 minutes and 10 minutes and 10 minutes and 5 minutes. And I've used up my time. You have 10. Thanks.
I have 10.
No, you have 5, sorry.
Five. Oh. Thank you. Hello, I'm Ulrich. I'm working for IIS, and we are the Swedish Registry. And let's see, you all were waiting for another rollover, weren't you? So yeah, you probably remember this date. That is when we first signed the .se domain. And I believe we were the first TLD, but there is, at the time, the highest defined algorithm was RSA SHA-1. And so that's what we used. And we believe that the time has come. So fast forward, 2017, we want to roll to RSA. On the 28th of November, is the planned date to start our rolling the algorithm. And we will roll to the best supported algorithm available right now, which is, not very exciting, I know, but, that's what it is. Best supported, we have a very high percentage of resolvers in Sweden validating, and we would like to stay that way, and better safe than sorry, so we take something that we very sure will going to work. And yeah, our zone file is public. If you didn't know, zonedata.iis.se, you can download our zone whenever you want. Every day, every update is available. And so we run NSEG, and we will stay with that one. And because my talk is too short, Moritz said I should show cats. So that's what I do. That's for you, Moritz. And yes, we would like to invite you and help us and watch our zone by the rollover and see if we break anything. Hopefully not, but who knows. And strange things happen out on the internet. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have some time for questions.
Hi, Melissa Muth, University of Pennsylvania. Why did you decide against ECDSA?
That was my question.
Well, the main reason is that we have this high number of resolvers in Sweden, and there is like more than 90% of people in Sweden are behind a validating resolver. And we would like it that it stays that way. And, and if we go to an algorithm that is not supported by the resolver, we basically go unsigned. Or unvalidated, whatever And we don't know. We really don't know what resolvers out there are doing. And we try to find out, but so we go with a safe alternative. I know, as I said, it's boring, I know. And yes, I would like to go to ECC, but that's a safe choice. That's why we did it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What measurement would persuade you that there would be no change whatsoever between the two algorithms?
You don't have to convince me. I'm already convinced. But, there is a lot of... And I think we would need feedback from the Swedish community to say, yeah, we support this. It's no problem for us. And we are talking to our ISPs, but some of them are quite hard to reach. So,
I am not a Swede, but since March 2017, every single one of your resolvers that resolves RSA, resolves ECDSA to P256, I can assure you. Does that help?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Somewhere here is Sean, who's going to talk about metazones. And you've got 10 minutes, if I've got this right.
I was going to ask for his extra, but that's fine. I'm Sean Infinus. I'm talking for myself. Work at a big place. So I've recently had an opportunity to redo the way my secondary cache layers were getting their management information. And the legacy system just wasn't going to work. So I went and looked at the literature and had read Vixie's, how do I change this? Just arrow? There we go. There, that's fast. Okay. I'd read Vixie's paper a long time ago. It's 11 years now. And I had a dream, but Vixie had the dream before me. Put your information in his own. You're already doing DNS, so why not? This makes people who are looking at the ports around your edge very happy. There is a modern draft in progress. Bind 9.11, I believe, has the catalog zone concept. Yes. I didn't use it. It's really just a zone list, and my secondary systems that I may or may not be responsible for and talking about here have incredibly diverse needs, different access lists, different sources of truth. And I also looked at, surveyed the software that's out there. I wanted to shout out to Tony Finch at Cambridge for his NS Notive ID stuff. I love it. I just can't use his MetaZone Perl script. It makes me look sad looking at all that Perl. And I'm an old Perl guy. Need more than zone lists. So I took the existing draft and I extended it. I've defined a set of name server groups, and each server can discover which name server group it belongs to. We support properties being overridden at the name server group level and at the zone level. And then there's some other things like being able to validate all this stuff before I stuff it into a name server and have all my things go. So I'm going to hand wave a lot about what's above those layers. I'm not talking about how that happens. Doesn't matter. I will talk about my dream of one day I would like to be able to look at my capacity graphs and say, oh, it's trending up in this data center. I want to build more capacity horizontally. API call later. It announces itself. Anycast is up. Done. Graphs go down. I can't do that with anything that's out there now. But here's a step. So a new name server, as it is built with whatever it is built with, can find out where to get its data with a single lookup. I will note in red I am using APL. There is nothing anywhere near close enough to describe access lists in a brief way. If I were to try to do this with A records and other things that try to describe the mask, my record count in the metazone would triple easily. And let's see, a little bit here, the discovery part where I'm using dnames. I only have one metazone for dozens of name server groups. They're all mapped to the same zone in different namespaces. I use multi-label names everywhere. So I don't have to worry about it. I only have one zone to move around. It's great. So properties work like this. You can look up the global properties. At each level, a name server group, which you know your membership from because of the DNAM mapping, you just look up the property. Zone override, this is in alignment with the draft standard that SHA-1 hash is the SHA of the R data for the zone name. You can override at that level too. And I have an attribute that lists out all the attributes that we support. So this is how the global defaults are defined. Bearing in mind this is all just extensions to the standard as it's published now. This is how I do zone lists. I added zone count in digits for a very pragmatic reason. Not everything can actually AXFR the zone, and not everything actually has a local copy when I'm booting. This allows me to iterate the list. And I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go fast. This is the part where overrides for the name server groups. This is what it looks like in bind after it's been generated at the local name server. One fun part is the metazone itself is very difficult to manage with the metazone data. I cheat. And then there's the, I want to help update the draft. Don't know what I'm going to do next, but view support seems like a good idea. I intend to update what happens based on operational experience. This is very, very new. I have code I can't share, but I will say that my bonus is tied to sharing open source code, so that's likely. Any questions?
No questions?
No. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now for the Southern Hemisphere. Let me get this right. Sorry, I'm looking things up too. Jing, on traffic sources seen in .nz. 10 minutes.
Hi everyone, I'm Jing. I'm working for NZDARS, the .nz registry. And this is my first org, so I beg you to be merciful. And I'm here to share with you my work on the clustering analysis to the sources that we're seeing at the .nz authoritative name servers. So what's the problem? It seems many of the works that have been done is based on an assumption that all the sources sending queries to the authoritative name servers are DNS resolvers. It's very easy to neglect the fact that there are actually different types of sources. I have a previous work that I trained cluster models that based on 1 day's data and with 14 features. And that was mentioned and that was introduced in a talk on August 25th by Sebastian. And I've been recently carrying on with this work. So the data set I'm dealing with is actually collected in NS1 to NS4, which is 4 name servers out of all the 7 .nz name servers. And we are now getting the data for NS5 and NS6 thanks to Sarah, who is hosting the 2 name servers for the .nz and providing us the data. And it's about 500K and 600K unique source IP we've seen each day. And we have a set of known samples, less than 1,000, which belongs to some resolvers and non-resolvers. Instead of just 1 day's data, I'm now taking into account a longer period, 3 months, which is 92 days. And I've been doing some feature engineering to add some more features that can better capture the different behaviors of sources. I use some stats like means, standard deviation, percentiles to try to describe some certain daily features that cross these 92 days. So when it comes to machine learning, there are normally a set of steps. And firstly, you need to scale your data before you fit it into some model. And I've tried several different scalars, and actually standard scalar fit my data quite well. And there are many clustering models to select from. And they have their advantages and disadvantages. But in general, k-means is the most common one, and it's very scalable to large sample size. And So I tried that first. And after training your model, you need to evaluate the performance of your model. There are actually many evaluation metrics. And it's particularly important that we have some ground truth, which is very useful to verify if my model is well separated these different non-resolvers. And overfitting is very common problem in machine learning. So if I think my result is not very satisfactory, and I don't know why, and I will consider if it's overfitting, and there are some methods like PCA that I can apply to try if I can get a better result. And the preliminary results is 7 clusters, and the good news is that I got all the ICAM monitors that fall into one cluster that is different from non-resolvers. But non-resolvers are splitted into different clusters. But I guess it's as expected. I expect there are different sizes of ISPs, and the validating resolvers send many DS queries, and there are some public DNS servers like Google DNS, which has a lot of instances across the world and has quite different infrastructure. And there is one cluster that I have no known data that fall into. And look at this picture. What is it? It doesn't. I'm sorry. It doesn't look nicely separated. But actually, you see, it's just a 2-dimensional visualization, and I have 30 features. And so this is just a scatter that across 2 primary components, 2 directions in the multi-dimensional space. Because unfortunately, human eyes can't understand data in a highly dimensional space. So it's very hard for me to imagine how it's separated across these 30 features working together. But I can get some information from this. You can see some black outliers there. And actually, the black cluster is ICAM monitoring hosts fall into. So that gives me some indication that the model kind of learned some difference between these monitors from the other addresses. And my future work includes to explore the patterns in each cluster to find out what type of sources are they. And I'll carry on with an iterated process of training the model to try to find more ground truths. And these ground truths will be very useful to be used to train our later classifier to recognize the resolvers. Also, I expect to find many interesting certain patterns during the process that we can research into further. That's the end. Thank you very much.
Well, you've left ample time for questions. And
you're really good.
Don't go away.
Hey, it's Marek from Cloudflare. I just had one quick question. Do you actually use any of the knowledge-based feature extraction? For example, you could say an IP is likely a resolver if it doesn't set the RD bit in queries and stuff. Or did you just use the machine learning?
Sorry, can you repeat that? It's the feature.
If you used any, if you applied any knowledge about how DNS works to classify resolvers or IPs as being resolvers.
Do you mean that
Yeah, if you go back to the slide with the feature extraction thing. Oh, it's gone. We can take this offline as well. Thank you.
So Sebastian is over there. He may have some, know some more about that.
Sebastián Castro en Cerares. The answer is yes. We include the recursive bit and some other bits, and we have this discussion on Wednesday about using a specific DNS knowledge and of a specific implementations, stuff like that, in order to go and find the ground truth, which is a further exploration of this work.
Thank you.
No.
Okay, one more question. Alison Menken. I wondered, I mean, so one of the questions people do have is this a recursive? And have you thought about, I don't know if you can apply sort of deep learning techniques and start with a labeled set and build something that actually can say kind of definitively eventually, yeah, that one is a recursive, that one isn't. But that might be an interest. Have you thought about that at all?
Deep learning, as I know, that is now more used for the supervised learning.
Yes.
And for my stage, I'm now still in discover some patterns, which is unsupervised.
Right, but you could ask the guy sitting next to you to supervise a set for you and then start with a trained set that had been supervised, actually. It'd be an interesting direction to think about.
Yes, I will find more ground truths so I can label them to have them as training data, but that's a later work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you. Oh, look, Warren's going to talk about .internal, isn't he?
I think so.
Either that or your slides are wrong.
Yep, probably both. So this I'm calling .internal. It's currently just a working title. You know, the actual string is not important. Originally, I was describing this as RFC 1918 for the names. But after looking at that some more, it's not really a good analogy. Instead, I'm kind of trying to call it a condom for the namespace. Yeah. So who remembers name collisions? Weren't those fun? Let's talk about them some more. So users want a pony. They want an internal namespace which is disconnected from the DNS. They want this for various reasons, right? Like they set up a machine which is never going to be connected to the internet, or they build themselves a little sort of small network, like, you know, they install a new Active Directory system or something, and they want to choose a name. And what they've been doing is they're choosing things like home and corp, remember the discussions about those, or .internal, apparently is also a fairly common one. A more interesting one, I think, is localhost. You know, if I open a browser and I go to localhost, I kind of assume that that's going to be captured locally, and I'm definitely going to get 127.0.0.1 or ::1. Turns out a lot of people actually ship that to the DNS, which, you know, is potentially a big security issue. And something which I think demonstrates that users really want this sort of thing is .local domain. When we were looking at this originally with the name collision stuff, local domain didn't seem to be very common. New versions of Linux, I think it's mainly Ubuntu, when you install them, if you don't choose a host name, seem to name themselves localhost.local domain. And that's fairly recent. People seem to really want this sort of a name. You know, we told them not to do this. Actually, kind of as an aside, that's not really true. A long time back, Microsoft used to suggest if you set up a system and it's not really connected to the internet, just use .local. You know, this was the explanation of why. Okay, but that's kind of an aside. Users want a pony, we keep telling them no. You know, not yours, you can't have this, don't do that. However, they really, really want a pony. What we actually say is, you should go off and you should register something. You know, go to your friendly registrar, buy mycompany.com, and then use foo.mycompany.com. You know, we're the adults in the room. This is risky behavior. You really don't want to just make up your own name. Go get your own portion of the namespace. Do whatever craziness you want to do in there. We also preach abstinence, right? We tell teens, don't have sex before you're grown up and know what you're doing. Don't have sex before you're married. These two things seem to be about equally effective. People want to do something. If you have no way to police them, they're going to go off and do it anyway. What we can do, if we can't stop them, is maybe we can make this behavior slightly less risky, right? We can give them sort of a condom for the namespace, potentially. And what I'm calling this is .internal. It's a name which is currently sort of squatted on. I think we should take a name and set it aside and say, we think what you want to do here is probably a bad idea. You know, you should really use a name that's been registered in the DNS and use a subdomain of that. We understand you're not going to. You know, we've warned you, if you're going to do strange stuff, go do it over here. So I'm proposing we set aside a name like .internal. This would be added to the IETF Special Use Names Registry. For completely non-technical reasons, I believe it needs to be a TLD. Right? If you tell people you should go and do this thing, you know, make up your own name under internal.arpa, they're just not going to do it because it doesn't look as cool. So, you know, this goes against the recent IAB suggestion that maybe you should put this under .arpa. It's completely a non-technical reason. It's purely aesthetic. But I think it's sort of a reason we need to keep in mind. Because of weird DNSSEC requirements, and I'd rather we discuss these offline because I'd like more time for questions and tomatoes, it would have to be added to the root with an insecure delegation. Otherwise, local DNSSEC validation fails, and there need to be a process created for actually asking the asking ICANN to please consider giving one of these so that we can go talk to the IANA, blah, blah, blah. This is a many-year process. Anyway, I think that we really need to do this. People want a pony. If you don't give them what they want, they're going to make your life miserable in some way. And
you know, Warren, you were wrong. The only thing I have is at 5 minutes to 3, the next lightning talk starts.
Oh, crap.
And that's 15 minutes of
15
tomatoes,
minutes of abuse.
rotten eggs, and vegetables.
Guys.
Feel free.
This is Andre, I see. What about .condom? No, there's not the question. But do you actually have an evidence that non-English speaking, non-Western are also using .home and other English names? So because the .internal is an English name.
Yes. So yeah, that's entirely true. As I say, .internal is just a working title. Somebody suggested maybe you should use a couple of these, like maybe .home and .corp, because people have already been using them. But yeah, I realize this is entirely a Western, you know, this is an English word. I don't know what word we use. Working title for now.
Yeah. So Ray Bellis, ISC, soon to be co-chair of HomeNet, and I want a pony, because it just strikes me as incredibly ironic given sort of the 18-month political battle that we had in that working group trying to get .homenet, and essentially be told, actually the IAB had no appetite whatsoever for trying to create that process. That we have this strange irony of the .alt, that obviously you were involved with as well, where we can reserve domain names, or rather a portion of the namespace that looks like a TLD, but only if it's not going to be used for actual DNS. And we had this irony where in HomeNet we wanted to use .homenet for something that is actually DNS, and we're told, sorry, you can't do that because that's going to need a change in the root zone. And it was exactly all the same arguments. And what we've ended up with .home.arpa, it wasn't actually just the aesthetics for TLD. I think we had a real concern that actually for the vast majority of the world, we didn't actually want the connotation that .arpa still has, because you go and look up ARPA without the dot, and it's still Advanced Research Projects Agency. It's US Gov. But hey-ho, we are about to get .home.arpa, and it's all we work, but yeah, wish this had been done years ago.
Yeah, so I mean, this does say, you know, there is no process for this. It's entirely possible that if a process is generated, it will take many, 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 many years. And it's entirely possible that it will all just fail, right? That's one of those, this would potentially start the process discussion.
It's going to be an interesting battle.
Yep. Maybe. Or maybe it'll just fly through, who knows?
John O'Brien, University of Pennsylvania. First thing I'll say is thank you so much for working on this. I'll buy you the beverage of your choice. Second thing is just a humorous aside, which is there's a group in my organization that many years ago decided that they were going to use .int. So it was actually collision from day one. And the third thing is, I mention this not to suggest that it points the way toward a solution, but that it illustrates the kind of problem space that should be worth considering, and that's IPv6 unique local addressing, so that there could be a way to generate a unique name that would address some of the other challenges. Any reactions?
Nothing that I can think of immediately. I mean, that's definitely an idea, and there has been some work on it before, and I can't remember what it is. But there is a way so the machine can generate its own unique name currently in a thing, which I thought was like UUIDs and registering them somewhere. But it's
sure, which of course is terrible feasibility. Yeah. The reason you want to have .local or .dev or something. So yeah.
Paul Hoffman, and once you hear this, pretend I don't work for ICANN.
Of course.
So a couple people before me in line said, well, think about whether it's English. So instead of doing something in English, maybe a very short string, 3 letters that sort of are universally recognizable, things like that. What about .app?
Thanks, next.
It's been great having you work at ICANN, Paul. Matt Larson, another idea is ISO 3166 Alpha 2, they're the user-assigned ones. XA through XZ are user-assigned, as are a bunch of others, including .zz. So wouldn't that be cool?
So yeah, I can't remember who suggested it. It might actually have been Ed Lewis. Yeah. So yeah, there are some set aside for that. And one of the issues is, will people think that that looks pretty enough? And I realize that this is in no way a thing that we can actually figure out. But ZZ-my company might be a perfectly reasonable thing, as long as, yeah, I mean, that seems like a perfectly reasonable thing. We should definitely discuss that some more. I think Ed actually had a draft on it, didn't he? Or whoever it was had a, okay, yep. So yeah, maybe the two things together, or maybe just that. Whatever the case, I think that, users do want this, and we should give them some sort of way. Partially because currently, if there are collisions, we can't really say what you wanted to do was stupid. You should have done it over here instead, right? Maybe in the next round of new GTLDs, which will happen. If there was at least somewhere we could say what you should have done is the craziness, you should have done it over there, we will be able to get some of the moral high ground back, or not.
We still have a minute, and I have one comment, and I'll get there before Andrew gets to the microphone, but we'll let that too. I'll stop this at 10:02. ICANN commissioned a report, Jazz Consultants wrote it, about name collisions. In that report, it said, recommendation numero uno, the TLDs.corp.home and .mail be referred to the IETF for potential RFC 1918-like treatment. Why don't you just go the whole hog and ask for all 3 right now and say you are merely implementing the consultant's report?
Been there, done that.
Oh, okay.
So Lyman Chapin a while back actually tried to reserve Home Corp Mail and I think .lan as well or something. And the DNS OARC working group at the time looked at it for a while and said, politics, this looks hard. And they walked away at the time. It's entirely possible we could bring that back. And if somebody wants to suggest...
Local domain, internal, all of them. Just...
Yep.
Right, there is a never-ending list, and Andrew's going to finish it for us.
I'm Andrew Sullivan, and I do not work for the IETF. But since you are suggesting, this is not our problem, why don't you go over there? I would like to suggest that you take this to the people who are responsible for managing the top-level domain of the domain name system, and I encourage you to take this proposal to a PDP at ICANN, where I think it belongs. Thank you.
What did I ever do to you?
Thanks, Warren.
Thank you.
And last, and we've actually got 10 minutes, not 5, Dan, so you know the drama is there for you. Over to you, thank you.
Sure, thanks. I apologize, I don't have a slide deck prepared, so I'm going to be flying a little bit live.
Excuse me. Could someone please close that door at the back? Thank you.
Which is why there's a second laptop here, and hopefully it won't fall off and go crashing to the ground and take out the internet. Stop touching your keyboard, really. Why don't I? Where's my mouse going? Stop it. Okay, good, I got it. All right, so give me just one moment. This will be really easy. And we'll blow it up nice and big so that everyone can see. So the title of my talk is Deprecating RFC 5074. For those who don't know, 5074 is the DLV RFC. I tried to teach my niece a really awful DLV joke, but her parents just didn't support it, so there you go. And it's not all that often that you get to change the internet in front of some of the smartest people you've ever met, so let's go. DLV.isc.org has been in place for about 8 or 9 years now, and it's always been the fallback that people have been able to use for not really deploying DNSSEC or but my parent isn't signed, and the root has been signed for a long time, and in fact it's about to be re-signed, and it seemed like a good time to just shut this puppy down. And this IP address I'm typing in here is the stealth master for DLV.isc.org. And you can see it's long. If I pipe it through WC-L, it's 8,264 lines. Well, it was 8,000 lines. So what I think you'll find is that should have done something. Oh, let me make the font a little bit smaller so that you can see that that is now the entire zone file. Any questions? Told you I only needed 5 minutes. I want to thank Ray and Keith for accommodating this last-minute request.
But I was using it.
So there has been a note on the dlv.isc.org webpage that says we've been deprecating it and we would be shutting it down sometime in 2017. If my calendar app is running correctly. I'm out of time. Exactly. We're about to, this literally just happened. This is the stealth master, so if you're dinging against the real name servers, they may take a moment to update. We're going to announce to DNS OP and the rest of the mailing lists and NANOG and wherever else anyone thinks is good shortly. But any other questions? Dwayne?
Yes, so Dwayne from VeriSign. A, thank you.
Sure.
B, the sort of title of your talk was deprecating RFC, yada, 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 but really you've turned off the service.
That was a tongue-in-cheek title,
okay,
yes.
So the record type, for example, is not being deprecated in bind or anything like that, right? Okay, thanks.
Sure. There is a great question about if at this point it's worthwhile deprecating the RFC itself. There's nothing really stopping anyone else from starting up another DLV registry, except for everyone in this room is immediately going to run after them and just try to choke the ever-living hell out of them. Anything else?
My phone just broke.
Blame T-Mobile.
Thanks, Dan.
Sure.
Over to Keith for last-minute announcements.
So thank you for all our lightning talks, and Jeff is our final session chair. So this ends the open public part of the OARC 27 workshop. So I would just like to let you know about the logistics of switching to the AGM. So if you are not an OARC member, then we need you to please leave the room. Thank you for attending. We hope you'll think about becoming an OARC member on the basis of what you've seen, in which case please speak to Sue or anybody. There is some sandwiches left over from lunch, so if anyone wants to take these away, they are set out outside. If you are an OARC member, then it's okay to leave your stuff in here, but we do need everybody out of the room so that we can verify people coming back in. One of you, each of you that works for an OARC member will be the designated representative. If you're not sure who it is, please sort that out with your colleagues. The designated representative should then go to the registration desk with Sue, ASAP, and basically obtain your voting card. There will be a coloured voting card, and there will be a voting paper for the board elections. Okay. We'll let people leave the room before I continue. Sorry? Yeah, okay, so much for the instruction. Yeah, so all the members, once you have your papers, if you can come back here in 30 minutes, please, at 3:30.